Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to all of you students. This is your teacher, English teacher Miss Azmana, and I am here with your week 11 home task. The topic that we are going to discuss today is very easy and very important. It's past continuous tense. Now students, let me tell you that past continuous tense is not something that we haven't done before. We have been using and doing tenses for a long time, and when I say the word past over here, past means something that has already happened in the past and it is still continuing when I say continuous, right? So past continuous tense is something that happened in the past, it's continued over there. Now we are going to read the certain parts of it that we are going to use the positive, negative and question sentences. We are also going to read the structures and forms of these past continuous sentences, and I'm also going to tell you the uses of past continuous tense in our life. Now students, let's see this. Form of past continuous tenses. Positive sentence. We have subject. We have form of the helping verb or auxiliary be. We have the main verb, which is going to be used as the fourth form of verb, that is ing form, or we also call it present participle. And of course, to complete the sentence, we are going to use a modifier to explain you the positive sentences. For example, I was listening to music. This is how I am going to make my positive sentence using past continuous tense. You were dancing happily. Or it could be they were dancing happily. Or when it comes to the singular subjects, he was reading books, or she was reading books, or it was reading books. Now you see that which auxiliary I have used with the plural subjects and with the singular subjects. This you need to keep in your mind. Now students, when I talk about the form of past continuous tense, negative sentence. What is the structure of the negative sentence when we're using past continuous tense? Again, in the table, I have subject, I have the form of be, that is was, were, and then I'm going to have not to show my disagreement or negativity. And then I have main verb. Again, I'm going to use the present participle, that is the fourth form of verb ing form. And of course, to complete my sentence or give it a complete meaning, I'm going to use a modifier. Now let's see with the plural subjects. I was not listening to music. I can also use a contraction for was not. I wasn't listening to music. You were not dancing happily. Now I can also use a contraction for were not. I can say you weren't dancing happily. When it comes to the singular subject, I say he was not reading books. I can use a contraction for was not, just like before. He wasn't reading books. So these are the rules for my plural subjects and these for the singular subjects. This is how you can make a negative sentence. Now, of course, when you have used positive and negative sentences, how can we leave the question statements or interrogative statements? Let's see how to make a structure using past continuous form with yes and no interrogative sentence. We use first be or auxiliary form of verb, that is was, were, and was. We are going to use it first in a sentence. And then we are going to bring the subject, unlike the positive and the negative sentences. And then we are going to use main verb again, just like the sentence we have done before, verb ing. And then of course a modifier with a question mark. Let's see the example. Was I listening to music? Were you watching World Cup last night? Or were we watching World Cup last night? It could be were they watching the World Cup last night? When it comes to the singular subject, I say, was he being lazy? Or was she being lazy? Or was it being lazy? These were the questions that you could answer in yes or no. This is how you will make a structure for it. Now sentences which can start with WH, or we can say WH questions, to make a form of past continuous tense with WH questions. You first use the question word, that is the WH word, who, were, or who, or any other word that begins with question word that begins with WH, and then of course form of be, that is was and were, and then the subject, I, you, were, they, he, she, it, and then the main verb using the ing form, and of course the modifier with a question mark. Now let's see how can we make a structure using WH questions using past continuous form. Who was I talking to when the phone rang? Question mark. Where were you watching World Cup last night? Or where were we watching World Cup last night? Or where were they watching the World Cup last night? Who was he doing um, at 11 o'clock last night? What was she doing at 11 o'clock last night? Or what was it doing at 11 o'clock last night? Sorry, this is not who, this is what, please. What. So I use WH words like who, where, and what over here. Now students, it is very important to know the use of past continuous tense. Number one, we use the past continuous to say that an action was in progress at a specific time in the past. The action had already started at this time but had not finished. Now let me explain you this use with some examples. At 5 p.m. yesterday it was raining. I was having dinner at 6 p.m. last night. Last night at 11 p.m., my sister and I were watching TV. At midnight, we were still driving through the desert. What were you doing at midnight last night? Now, the second use of past continuous tense could be, we use the past continuous to say that an action was in progress at every moment during a period of time. You see this chronology? It's going to be easier for you. I'll explain this with some examples. Yesterday, she was sitting at her desk at work all day. You were working all day yesterday. Yesterday, they were not playing football at 9 a.m. What were you doing at 10 p.m. last night? Jimmy was working at 10 p.m. last night. Now let's continue with the third use of past continuous tense. We use the past continuous together with the past simple. You have to remember this is very important, students, at your level. The past continuous refers to a longer or background action that was in progress to indicate that a longer action in the past was interrupted. The past simple refers to a shorter action that interrupted the longer action or happened in the middle of it. Please keep this in your mind because this you will be using when you will have a question of using the form of verb in a sentence, the correct form of verb. So you have to keep this, it's just like a rule. of using simple past and simple past continuous in that question that you will attempt in your exam. So let's see the example. Let's see the example. John's daughter was sleeping when he called her at 8 p.m. Now you tell me which is the longer action and which is the shorter action. Jimmy was taking a bath when the phone rang. You see over here, Jimmy was taking a bath. A longer action, to explain my longer action, I used past continuous tense. To explain my shorter action, I used simple past tense, when the phone rang. It's a simple past tense. What were you doing when you broke your leg? I was snowboarding. See, snowboarding is a longer action. It takes more time. It doesn't happen in a split of time. So I say I use past continuous tense for explaining my longer action. Now let's see the fourth use. We use the past continuous to say that an action in the past was temporary. Okay, now I can explain this with example. Sarah was waiting for her friend for 20 minutes yesterday. You were working in the sales department last month. They were living in Paris for a year. Again, I'll come to the same thing, past continuous tense and past simple tense. We often use the past continuous tense with the simple past tense. We use the past continuous tense to express a longer action. I told you before. And we use the past simple tense to express the shorter action that happens in the middle of the long action. This is just an explanation, a repetitive explanation, so that it's easier for you to comprehend it and not to forget it. For example, I was watching TV when Jim knocked the door. Now, which is the shorter action, which is the longer? You will tell me. Watching television is a longer action, right? It expresses. We can express this in past continuous tense. And when I say Jim knocked the door, so knocking the door is a shorter action, and it can be expressed with simple past tense. Now, when plus short action, past simple tense, while plus longer action, past continuous tense. I was watching TV when Jim knocked the door. I was watching TV when Jim knocked the door. When Jim knocked the door, I was watching TV. So you use when with the shorter action. This is what I'm trying to say. And see this? Jim knocked the door while I was watching TV. So while is used for a longer action. Please remember this. While I was watching TV, comma, Jim knocked the door. You see, a longer action and a shorter action. You have to keep this rule in your mind. Now, you have to choose the correct tense, past simple or past continuous. Anand was sitting in a church when Roger opened the door. While Miss King dashed the lesson, the principal came. Okay. While Miss King was explaining the lesson, the principal came. So the longer action has been expressed in past continuous tense and a shorter in simple past tense. Father dashed home as mother was cooking. So father arrived home as mother was cooking. Since cooking is a longer action, I use it in past continuous tense. A woman screamed while her husband was driving. So now, which is the longer action? the driving. And which is a shorter action? Scream. So I'm going to use simple past tense while explaining the first part. A woman screamed while her husband was driving. While her friends were dancing, Amanda took a photograph. Andrew was sleeping when his son threw a ball to him.